chess friends, welcome to the Fide World Chess Championship 2024, round number 13. Today, I am going to show you the incredible chess game that was played between Gukesh D and Liren. This game is very astonishing and masterful. I will share the chess tactics and traps that they employed in the game, so stay tuned with me until the end of the video. Let's get started without wasting any time. Gukesh started the game with e4. Here, Ding had the choice to consider c5 or e5. But he chose the French fries variation in the Fide World Chess Championship. I think he is trying to play the game defensively against Gukesh because there is only one round and tie breaks left to determine the world champion. Both have 6 by 6 points in this variation. Gukesh had the choice to consider e5 or knight to c3 on the board, or e takes d5, which follows in many lines in the blitz games. Here, Gukesh had the choice to consider e5, therefore, black would consider c5, attacking the center. Where knight to c6 can be played with the idea of playing queen to b6 to gain access to this file and diagonal. After c3, knight to e7 happened in the game to attack the pawn from a different square. Later, when knight to c6 will be considered, instead of playing useless-looking moves, you have the choice to consider knight to a3, deploying another chess opening line where the knight has tremendous traps, if the king gets distracted from his opening lines and plays queen to b6 casually. Thinking that it is a good move to bring out the queen to the b6 square in the French fries defense, then he will fall into a trap. Gukesh can capture the pawn on the c5 square, and because the bishop's diagonal is blocked by the knight, Ding has to capture it with the queen. Then knight to b5 will arrive with the idea of threatening this and this. Therefore, after queen to b6 tries to protect the square, bishop to e3 will attack the queen. And the position will be devastated for Ding Liren in the opening. Ding might have to move his queen back to the d8 square, but doing so will fall into another trap with knight to d6 check. Then knight takes f7 will come, which will fork his pieces. Going back to the variation, noticing that the queen is under attack and it cannot move back, after d4 happens in the game to try to block the attack, knight to d6 check might appear on the board. This position is just vulnerable for black because knight takes d4 opens up the queen's file in the opening. Black has to play knight to d5 to try to attack the knight and create some pressure. Therefore, knight takes c6 will arrive with the idea of attacking the queen. Even if you dare to capture the queen on the c6 square, you will fall into a trap, because bishop to b5 will come, and Gukesh will enjoy his meal, his afternoon meal with coffee and a smile. He will be celebrated for winning the round 13 game, and Ding will be distressed. Going back to the variation, Gukesh didn't consider the advanced French variation. He played knight to c3, deploying another strategy where the knight controls the center. We have knight to f6, and e5 follows in the game, where knight to d7 follows. You can see that this position is not similar to the previous one. In the previous variation, there was a knight located on a3, but this is absolutely another variation where c5 is now considerable because there is an open diagonal for the bishop. Gukesh has the advanced pawn structure, which is advantageous for him. We have knight to e2, where c3 and f4 can be possible with the idea of playing knight to f3. Another move he can play is knight to f4, creating some pressure over the Kingside square, where bishop to d3 can arrive, accessing this diagonal with the idea of playing queen to h5 or queen to g4. Now Gukesh brings some water and plays c5. We have c3 to create a pawn chain, where queen to b6 can arrive to create some pressure on the b2 and d4 pawns. But hold on, Gukesh has queen to c2, which will protect the pawn at any cost. A few moves later, we have a3. As you can see, the move a3 has a masterful plan because whenever pawn exchanges occur on the d4 square, the a3 pawn will secure the b4 square from any invasion by the bishop or knight. In this position, as you can see, the a3 pawn is protecting the b4 square. We have bishop to e7. Accessing this dark square diagonal where the queen and bishop together are targeting these squares, there is a possibility that Gukesh can advance his kingside pawns to invade black. We have bishop to e3 on the board, and here is a question mark for Ding Liren. Can he castle on the short side? Ding is a very obscure player against Gukesh, and he wants to defeat Gukesh somehow because the match is almost equal, and Gukesh is almost 50 points higher than Ding here. If Ding castles, thinking it is a very good move to consider, Ding will be very distressed because his pawn structure is not well prepared. Kesh has an advanced pawn structure that can attack through knight to f4, and whenever Ding plays any developing moves, such as b6 or bishop to b7, bishop to d3 will come by Kesh, attacking the pawn on h7. You can see how the knights are dominating the board. Kesh can even play h4 to create some pressure on the kingside. Kesh will not castle, as you can see all his minor pieces are together attacking the kingside, where queen to c2 and d3 can be possible, after the rook moves, hoping to play bishop to f8 and protect the kingside. The position will be just overwhelming. Knight to g5 will smash down Ding's intellectual strategy. Ding will face tremendous problems because he cannot capture the knight at all, as there is a possibility of opening up the rook file. However, that was the best move, but if Ding considers h6 to kick out the knight, a brilliant move will arrive. Can you guess what the brilliant move is? The move is bishop to h7, forcing the king to move. After the king moves, thinking he can capture the bishop after the knight moves back. Hold on. I am the Super Chess Grandmaster. I am Kesh, the Enlightenment era of India. I will capture the pawn on f7, forcing your king to move. After that, queen to c2 will arrive, and your king will have to move again. You will not get peace, as Kesh will destroy you with knight takes h6, sacrificing the knight like a brilliant champion. After that, queen to g6 will follow, and knight takes e6 will lead to checkmate. You have to bow down and surrender to Kesh. So, going back through the vision, we discovered that playing short side castling would be a very risky choice for Ding Liren. That's why he played knight to b6, because he wants to exert some control over the center and opening and free up the bishop's diagonal to play short side castling if possible. We have knight to f4, where the knight can move up to f3 and create some pressure. We have some center exchanges and knight to c4 happening in the game. Now, Ding's plan becomes clear. He wants to exchange the bishop because the dark squared bishop might create some problematic situations on the king's side. Additionally, the bishop is protecting the d4 pawn, the important pawn on d4. That's why Kesh has to capture the knight on the c4 square. He has no other choice, and after capturing, the d-file becomes wide open for Ding Liren. Also, he gets the d5 square for his knight or his light squared bishop. Therefore, Kesh can play rook to c1 to attack the pawn. And Ding has the opportunity to consider b5, a5 or the rook to create some problematic situations on the queen's side alongside the bishop and knight. Therefore, we have knight to e2, Kesh wants to play a healthy castle, and knight to c3 can arrive to go to the e4 square and create some pressure in the center and on the king's side, where the knight can drive into the ocean like a shark. Therefore, Ding says, "Gui gui, hold on, my shark. Let me catch your face," by playing b5. First, it protects the pawn, and it has the opportunity to play rook b8 to open up the file and play short side castling. Okay, both sides castled, and we have knight to c3 on the board, where the queen gets the open diagonal, and the knight can go to the e4 square followed by g5 to create pressure on the h7 pawn. That's the plan of Kesh. Ding Liren first considered rook to b8 to protect the pawn from the knight invasion. Also, Ding has the opportunity to consider b4 in the future to open up possibilities for the knight or bishop. The queen also has an open diagonal, but it has no future there. Therefore, Kesh first considered knight to h5, and this knight, in this single instance, is like going to war with one sword against the whole army on the king's side. At this point, don't misunderstand the knight, it is a very powerful and brave soldier, like Iron Man. If Black dares to consider any normal kind of move, such as a5, he will be just gone because there is queen to g4 attacking the pawn on g7, and he will face malaria because knight to e4 will come, and the pawn on g6 will be pinned down to the king. I have the opportunity to play knight to f6, and you can see with the board knights, I can nightmare your position on h7, therefore, even after the king moves, I can play knight to f6 on the board with the idea of playing queen h4, attacking the pawn on h7. This position will be just over for you because the knight is well protected by the other knight. The bishop has dark square possibilities and power on the h6 square. Your bishop and dumb rook cannot do anything, and your position will be just over. You have nothing to do. You just resign and surrender to the rook, even if black dares to consider h5 to attack the queen g5, queen to h6 can arrive, and the game will be over because after capture and recapture happen on the board, queen to h6, queen g7 will lead to a checkmate, the game will be just over. So, going back to the position, we discovered that playing any normal kind of move, such as a5, would be a very bad condition for Ding Liren. That's why Ding, to protect his title as world champion, played f5 on the board, trying to protect the g5 square where queen to e8 can arrive to gain access to this diagonal. Therefore, the rook is played in person, and we have bishop takes f6, protecting the g6 pawn. This king's side is well protected because white does not have many attacks. They have an open rook file, and the pawn on the e6 square is a backward pawn, not backward, but a pawn island. Also, Kesh's pawn on the d4 square is also a pawn island, you can say, and the bishop is well protecting the pawn. Queen to e8 can come to gain access to this diagonal with the idea of playing rook f6 and g6 to gain access to the g file. Therefore, Kesh, noticing all these moves, moved his queen to the f3 square, attacking the knight. We have queen to e8, protecting the knight and attacking the knight on h5 at the same time. We have knight takes bishop, and after capturing happens on the board, many players might think of considering queen to g3 or putting the queen on the king's side, but that would be a very bad choice because if you play queen g3, there is rook to g6, the queen will face a malaria problem where the bishop can go to the b7 square, attacking the g2 pawn. You have to play very carefully. Don't give enough opportunities to your opponent that they can dominate over you. So, let me share an inspirational quote in sudden with you. You'll meet many storms along the journey to success. Your job isn't to avoid them, but rather to weather them as you wait for the sun to shine on your path once more. So, going back to the position, the queen cannot go there. Therefore, we have queen to e2, indirectly attacking the pawn on e6, where d5 is possible, and the knight is attacking the d5 square. Rook to e1 is possible to gain access to this file, and another rook can join the d1 square. The queen goes to the g6 square, creating some pressure on the g2 pawn with the possibility of doubling up the rook on the f file. The bishop can arrive at the b7 square to attack the pawn. Now, we have f3. Kesh wants to protect his position because Kesh is the best chess player, and he is able to defeat Magnus Carlsen. I think if Magnus played in the World Chess Championship, Gui could even defeat Magnus Carlsen. That's my exact words because I am a fan of Gukesh. He is the Stockfish boy. Kesh is creating an outpost for the e4 square for the knight, where the bishop can reroute itself to the g3 square and attack the rook after the rook goes to the d1 square. Here, Ding Liren had the opportunity to consider b4. b4 is a very good move because after the exchanges, bishop to f4 will come to attack the rook. If you capture my bishop on the f4 square, then well done, I can play queen to e5, attacking both of your rooks. Therefore, after the rook moves, the bishop here and these childish moves will be played in the game, and at the end of the day, it might end up in a draw. So, going back to the position, Ding Liren didn't consider b4, he wants to win the game with the black pieces so that in game number 14, he will have the white pieces, and it will be much easier for him to draw or win with the white pieces in the next turn. That's why Ding moved back his knight to the e7 square to create and gain access to these light squares for the knight, and the bishop can go there. As you can see, we have bishop to f4, and as I told you, rook takes bishop is not possible because there is queen to e5. After the rook moves, we have bishop to c7 attacking the rook, and the rook wants to capture the pawn on b5, that's his plan. The rook moves here, and we have bishop to d6 to attack the knight. You can see that the Dumbo bishop on the c8 square has been paralyzed since the first move of the game. It hasn't moved. We have rook here, and after some captures, we have queen to e5, attacking the pawn on b5, a6 follows. And we have d5 on the board to open up the rook file. Can Ding capture the pawn on d5? Yes, that happened in the game. We have captures and a check on the board. Can you play king to h8? Let's look at this variation. There is queen to d6, that will arrive to attack the queen, and because the queen is hiding in the toilet room, black can do queen exchanges, but the problem for black is that he will face tremendous problems from white, and white's position will become very active. The knight can go to e4, white can double up his rooks and join his rook on the e-file. The king needs to move to the center of the board in the endgame, but the king is located in the corner of the board, which is not ideal. So, in this position, the king doesn't want to stay in the corner, and therefore, he played queen to e6, hoping for exchanges, but Kesh just ignored it because he wants to be the world champion. He has the hope of winning in the middle game by putting his knight on e4, joining his rook in the battle, and also doubling up the rooks on the d-file. The rook moves back here, and can Gui play rook to d6? Yes, he can play rook to d6, which is very good to consider, and after the queen moves, knight to e4 will arrive. You can see that black's position will be just defensive because all his pieces are concentrated, and the game will likely be a draw. So, going back to the position, Gui didn't play rook to d6, he played rook to e1 to attack through this file, where it targets the rook, but we have knight to e4, where knight to d6 can arrive to make a triple fork on the board. Therefore, after the rook moves, knight to e6 happens in the game, creating a fork on the pieces. Ding didn't fear this because he has rook to c7, and after a few moves, he again offered queen, exchanges, but Kesh shows him his finger and plays queen to d5. He doesn't want to draw the game, because he is trying to lead the game. Rook doubling can arrive on the e-file, the king moves to the corner, and we have rook to e5, trying to dominate the 5th rank, where rook to e1 can arrive. This is followed by the idea of playing rook to d7 to gain access to the 7th rank, where the knight is also creating some valuable pressure on the king's side. We have a rook here and rook doubling on the e-file, after the exchanges of rooks occur. I think capturing the rook with the queen would have been the best move, but we have rook takes rook. Gui doesn't want to do queen exchanges. Kesh wants to maintain his position. We have h6, the ding can create some breathing room for the king, where the king can smoke without a policeman arriving on the 8th rank to checkmate him. We have the queen here, and a few moves later, you can see how the queen comes under attack by the knight. The knight has the possibility of moving to the h5 square to create pressure on the g7 pawn, along with the rook and queen on d4. After a few moves, you can see how the rook is trying to attack the pawn, and the knight can also move back. We have bishop to f5, Ding is trying to reduce some attacking pieces. We have queen to d4, attacking the pawn with 2 pieces. A few moves later, you can see that we have bishop for knight exchanges and c3 happening in the game. Kesh is facing problems on the queen side, and he lost the pawn on a3, which is not ideal for Kesh because he has no future for the game, and the game is heading toward a draw. Can you do queen exchanges in this position? Yes, you can, but the problem for Kesh is that he will not lead the game. He cannot lead the game because black can capture the pawn, and he will have 2 versus 3 pawns on the king's side, which is just defensive for Ding Liren, leading to a draw. So, going back to the position, Kesh, still not losing hope, played queen to e5 to attack the pawn. At the same time, Kesh is trying to attack the b5 pawn. Kesh didn't lose hope. He is like a never give up soldier. At the end of the day, no matter what, slowly but surely, they are pushing the pawns, and h5 appeared on the board. If we capture the pawn, there is rook takes g3, the king will be cut off from the board, and we will see some repetition of moves, leading to a draw. Both players are at 6.5 to 6.5. And the next day, round number 14 will determine who will be the world champion. I hope you enjoyed the game very much. If so, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Bye bye, take care and see you soon.